All right, so welcome everyone. Today's KVA, we're going to talk about why do you need a CAD admin, and we'll get into why you need one, the pros and cons, and just kind of really understand why CAD admin is pivotal to everyone's business and maintaining data. And so we'll just get into the agenda. We'll go do some quick intros. We'll do a poll. And then our two main focuses today is, why do we need CAD admin, and what is a CAD admin? And really kind of look at that. And then of course, question and answers. And I expect we'll have a lively discussion. So currently we have Phil, myself, Jose, and Adam on, and we're part of the Vault team here at KETIV, and we look forward to having this discussion. So I guess we'll get started with some poll questions. So we'll send those out just to kind of get a feel for where people are at in the process. So to see the poll questions soon. So some of the questions are, what do you know what a CAD admin is or does? Do you have a CAD admin? Do you have one person who's responsible for the integrity of your engineering data? And the last question, do you have CAD standards and does someone enforce them? So we'll just give everyone a minute to fill in their information. Well, while we wait, let everyone fill in. The real idea behind this is, I can see we have the pleasure of working with a lot of companies and a lot of different vaults. And we've seen how a lot of people use Vault differently. And so we thought this would be a great conversation.
We already have a question. The hard part is the enforcement of the standards.
I think that's more of a correct statement.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
I fought that for 20 years, overseeing engineering stuff.
And not to try to plug our the software that we work with, but like Vault is supposed to help with that, right? Having stage gates with life cycles and professional, like that someone has to review and make sure that it's at those standards before it gets released. That's part of that CAD admin job a lot of the times, and being able to enforce those.
Yeah, looking at the poll questions, we got a good mix of about 50-50 on most of the questions. So this is good. So we'll get into our discussion. So kind of at a high level, it's like, what is a CAD admin? In my mind, it's really about someone that maintains, drawing standards, data integrity, someone that's ultimately responsible for the PDM server. That might include IT work. It might not. They might be the person that works with IT, and IT manages more the server side. But in my mind, at the very least, it's maintaining the integrity and the client side admin settings of Vault. And then, the real purpose of CAD admin is really just making sure that there's procedures and that they're being followed. Every Vault I've seen has been set up differently, similar but different. Everyone's life cycles are different. Everyone's engineering change orders are different. And the CAD admin is really the expert in how, an expert in the kind of data that you guys create. We've talked about this before, but it's like engineers are creating tons of drawings, this expensive data. When the tenets of Vault has been able to find data and reuse it, especially library and purchase parts. The CAD admin, in my mind, is responsible for the integrity of the data, including the purchase parts, including the libraries, things like that. At the core of it, one person in every organization really has to be responsible, because without a CAD admin, files will get named whatever they want, and they'll get put into Vault in whatever way they want, and they may or may not get released. And at that point, you're missing out on the benefit. And so the CAD admin, in my mind, is really the champion of the Vault server, the Vault expert, someone that's integral in the business and understands the data and how important the drawings are and how it affects manufacturing.
I think it goes even farther than that. It goes down to the actual drawing itself and how the title block is put on there. And, it's the look and everything like that. It's the fonts that you're using, that everybody's using the same font on all the drawings. The whole purpose of this is, when you send a drawing to a customer, you want that drawing to always look the same, no matter who does it. It should, they should be able to look at it and go, this is company X, because the look, the feel, everything is standardized. And that's where a CAD admin drives some of that stuff, to make sure that those drawings are done the same across the board, no matter who's doing them.
That extends to the manufacturing floor as well. It's very important that you guys that are out there fabricating are seeing the exact same drawings over and over for the same formats, so that they're not trying to have to relearn how to interpret a drawing from one engineer to the next.
Right, and that can be a critical problem if your drawings aren't the same. You can have manufacturing issues. People not understanding, if one person dimensions it one way and another person dimensions it another way, it can make it very difficult for manufacturing to be successful.
Yeah, that's a good point. There's a lot of great videos online or images of, someone putting the leader wrong and then someone interpreting that as a cut, or, that leader or that extra mark on the drawing gets incorporated into the final product.
Yeah. Being able to have someone that understands the process from beginning to end and knowing what's needed and being able to catch it, kind of making the engineering and the drawing process kind of a pass-through to ensure that everything is there, that it's necessary down the line, manufacturing and painting, assembly, all those things. A lot of times those are on the drawings. And if every engineer does it differently, then it's going to come back when it gets there. And then Jesse Garcia here is talking about a DRM, a drawings requirements manual. Yeah, a lot of the times someone like the CAD manager can create that and hand it out to the engineers, but at the end of the day, once it's handed out, they'll need to make sure that it's enforced, because we all get handed things all the time, and if we're stuck in our ways, a lot of times engineers are, it's something that has to be enforced and brought to attention if it's not being followed.
And that's the nice thing about Vault is, you can vault the data standard from Inventor. You can centralize the design data, the content center databases. Like, there's a lot of different ways that someone has to take ownership in terms of making sure that the metadata is correct, making sure that everyone's using the same start parts and stuff like that. And that's, the CAD admin really is the one that kind of either delegates or at least maintains the integrity to make sure everyone's using the same standards to minimize mistakes. Too many of us know, if the wrong PDF gets printed, or the drawing rev is different than the rev in Vault. Like, there's certain things like that in isolation is not that big of a deal, but if that gets to the floor and a couple of holes are in the wrong spot, you might not realize that it's a bad drawing until you get the final assembly, and at that point it's too late. Especially if you're in a high volume manufacturing, you don't catch it until 10,000, 100,000 units were made. It could be very costly.
Oh yes, very costly. Well, and let's go back to how many times have we been asked to help customers and they say they have clean data. We hear that all the time, that, hey, oh yeah, our data is very clean. And I don't know how many times we spend, Adam spent 100 hours writing special code to actually clean up what was supposedly clean data that this customer has that they want us to move. And most customers don't have clean data because they probably didn't have that CAD manager who was overseeing to make sure that, you know, half the drawings have dash rev and some of them are missing the dash, or, you know, if they put a special character at the end. I mean, Adam, you can speak to several of the customers we've had to deal with recently on that.
Oh yeah, it's cleanness is all in the eyes of the beholder, I guess. It's definitely important, especially later on. Look, you know, over the years, you know, you migrate from system to system. It's probably inevitable that you're going to do it at least once as things change, new technologies come around. And obviously, it's going to cost a lot more down the line to have somebody come through, you know, and have to write special code to clean up your data or to get everything to set standards and try to import it either into a new system or into a new location. So obviously keeping that maintained as you go is going to be a lot more beneficial, you know, down the road, not just like as you're working on components and on the shop floor, but future down the line when you decide that it's time to finally upgrade to that PLM system, or it's time to move to another product because it does this fancy feature that you need that nobody else has, or whatever the case may be, right? It's always changing, but keeping that data clean really shortcuts your process and takes out a lot of the heartache and headache down the line.
Yeah. Brian Kelly wrote, yes, otherwise the drawings look like a ransom letter with very disconnected appearances. It's the truth.
Well, and it's hard because every customer is at a different stage with Vault. You know, some get it, they set it up, but, you know, when it's one or two employees, it's very easy not to think about drawing standards, you know, because it's very easy to coordinate. But as you scale, you know, or someone leaves and someone else takes over, you know, one person makes, you know, manually makes the material library, then the next person comes and transitions to the design to the content center library. And then before you know it, you have, you know, or you have purchase parts that were made as an I assembly or an I part. And before you know it, you know, everyone's done it the way they knew how. And then, you know, then you have to do cleanup work. And so by getting the CAD admin early and getting these standards set up makes it easier as you mature with Vault, that things are set the wrong way or set up the right way, because, you know, we're all very busy. Most people don't have the time to go back and clean things up.
Yes.
You know, you bring up a good point too. Everybody doing something the way they know how. I think another good responsibility in the CAD admin role would be to make sure that their CAD personnel is trained. You know, a lot of times one thing that's missing out of a budget is training. So, you know, software is always getting updated. It's always progressing. And I think, I don't know what the most recent number is, but you only ever use a percentage of the ability of the software, you know, whenever you're not trained to do it. It's a very low percentage. So, you know,
Less than 25%, Adam.
yeah, it's ridiculous. Like, I think training is one of those things that is highly, you know, overlooked. And, you know, sure, sometimes it seems like, you know, oh, $10,000 for a 3-day course for, you know, 10 people, you know, that's a lot of money. But in reality, you're probably losing way more than that by not having your CAD, you know, personnel trained to operate the software efficiently. So yeah, CAD admin role, you know, I think would be a great place for somebody to keep tabs on when they need training, and maybe who needs to go to training or who needs to get special training to do more advanced, you know, skills because they're in a senior role or whatever the case may be.
I mean, they'll eventually be able to see, hey, we're getting the same result from these two engineers, but one of them is taking 50% longer. something like that. So maybe they're getting to the same result, but taking a slower, less efficient way. And as a CAD manager, you'll be able to kind of notice these things and hopefully, like you said, either get them training or get them up to speed on the SOP or what they need to be doing.
Yeah, that's a good point. Especially as new features come out, like, you can at least model almost everything 3 different ways. And there's pros and cons to both ways, whether you sketch and loft or extrude or shell something, never mind, model states or having the CAD admin see a need and using iLogic or something like that to automate it, to cut down on the time of, menial tasks that are repetitive. And so there's a lot of opportunity, and it really needs, the CAD admin kind of has the pulse and really good idea about what everyone's doing, and really kind of looks for those kinds of opportunities. There's a lot of features in Vault. It's easy to forget and not fully use Inventor or Vault, and the CAD admin, really helps with the standards, making sure that everyone's following, whether it's top-down modeling or bottom-up or a hybrid approach. Everyone's product is different in the way that things have modeled. And especially when we think about reuse in Vault and copy design, spending a little bit more time to make a clean model with parameters pays dividends when you use copy design later, when you can just open it up, change a few parameters, and you get to save that modeling time to produce a similar product that's just slightly different sizes. Or there's a lot of little things like that a CAD admin could really kind of streamline and help kind of be the change. Because we've all opened up models, and it's like, if they're modeled clean, they're, some of them are a lot easier to change, but some of them, the way, if you over constrain or whatnot, you spend, in some ways, sometimes it's easier just to remodel it than it is to try to fix a model that's, been designed poorly.
And we've run across some really good CAD admins that we deal with here at KETIV. I mean, their vaults are
immaculate.
Yeah. And their companies, they run real smooth. They don't have very many issues. And then we run across other vaults that are, in need of some help. And if you don't have Vault yet, the first thing you want to do is you want to clean your data. And if you're thinking about going to Vault, is have clean data and then spend the extra time beforehand when you're going to implement Vault to understand what your processes are going forward, and whether or not you're going to want to go into items, or you're going to want it to attach to your PLM or an ERP down the road, because you want to set yourself up in the very beginning so you don't have to make those changes 2 years in, because making those changes 2 years in can be very difficult.
One of those measure twice, cut once kind of things, because if you don't have time to do it now, it's definitely going to be a lot harder and more time consuming to go back and fix it afterwards once you have a bunch of things in there.
Right.
Let me add that, and for those who don't have Vault yet and have no idea where to start, that's what we're here for. Just call us up and we can go. We've seen a million different examples. We know what works, what doesn't work, and can really help you, to avoid some headaches of starting off in the wrong direction. So, feel free to reach out to us.
I really think if you're using Inventor and you don't have Vault, you're really missing out. It's key. I think every customer who is using Inventor for their design should be using Vault. You're not taking advantage of the power of Inventor when it's attached to Vault.
Yep, exactly. And it's way more than just like having a shared drive with all of your files on it. It's about backing up. It's about reusability. It's about making sure that you don't have multiple users working on the same file at the same time doing two different things. So, you know, not to get off into a whole vault discussion, but it's definitely more than just a shared drive like what I've heard some people compare it to. So if you have any misconceptions about that also, you know, there's a lot of data online about what vault is and what it isn't, and we can also help with that.
And like you mentioned, it all goes back to clean data. You know, if you're just starting, whether you have it or not, like as far as I'm concerned, it's the file naming from day one. You know, it takes a lot of time to go back and rename things, but, you know, in Vault, the file names create the items eventually get linked to PLM or ERP, and cleaning up that data so that you can link those to other tools, you know, can be a big lift. And so it's good to think about that in the beginning, making sure that the file's right, that you have the right metadata so you can actually easily find, reuse.
So I have one question and one statement here. Jared, how much control should a CAD admin have over how people are actually modeling? Multi-body approaches versus straight bottom-up, separate part design, which features to avoid using in modeling, etc.
Oh, that's a great question. I think it depends a lot on what it is you're modeling. I think that there should be at least some guidelines so that everyone's following a similar approach, so that because the last thing you want to do is open a model and then we could, you know, have to spend 5 minutes figuring out what order of operation they did to make something. So, you know, some designs lend themselves from, you know, a sketch bottom up kind of approach, and other designs, you know, especially when you have a robust purchase parts, you know, placing components, more of a top down works. And so it's really, in my mind, that CAD admin is to kind of figure out what approach is best for the kind of products you're making and the kind of design troubleshooting you're doing. But part of that standard we were talking about, you know, is training the users so everyone's modeling in a similar way, or at least a similar workflow.
Yeah,
so that you have clean models.
So, and can I make a statement, because in the statement you're referring to, I'm sure is the one I saw pop up briefly about can't get anybody to, you know.
Yes, that is the statement.
Yeah. Listen, that is a pain point in almost any company that I've ever worked in or I've ever seen try to do some sort of standard. So it's definitely a headache. I feel you. I think we've all been there. But consistency, you know, just you keep driving it in. And look, people, I've designed scripts that are basically an easy button where you push a button and it does all this wonderful stuff to automate a process, and people still didn't want it because people just don't like change. But, you know, if we keep driving it in and we're consistent with that, then once somebody starts to get used to it and then they start to realize, hey, you know, this is a better process, it does make my life a little easier, then they warm up to it over time or whatever. But it does take a lot of discussion, and it really, the process needs to make sense, you know, towards however your product's being developed. It can't just be something on a whim because a new manager came in and decided they wanted to uproot and change everything, right? That doesn't help, you know, anything in manufacturing. It just prolongs a lot of stuff. So it has to be a process that makes sense. And to elaborate on the point that Jason was talking about, you know, you definitely want to have everybody doing something, you know, in a similar way. So if you're talking about how you're modeling, like, you know, procedurally, whether it's top down or bottom up or whatever, I think a CAD admin should definitely have say over how something is procedurally modeled so that everybody's doing the same thing and you're following a standard. And another thing I want to add is that a lot of times you'll see a standard be written and then there'll be, oh, but there's this exception, you know, and then you start seeing this exception and that exception. Once you start making exceptions, it's no longer a standard. So you have to be consistent. You have to define what that procedure is, that standard is. enforce it. And obviously enforcement means different things for different companies. That's up to, you guys to decide, but consistency and enforcement is pretty much the only way I've ever seen people start to follow these things. So definitely a headache. Feel you there.
It's always going to come back with, oh, this is hot. This has to go out today. We need to cut this corner to get there. And like Adam said, once you start cutting corners, yeah.
Don't do it.
A lot of the times it comes down to, you're going to need support, either from higher up or even from the engineers. Like, you're going to have to justify it somehow. A lot of the times the justification that ends up happening is monetary. Like, all right, because we're doing it this way, we're saving time down the line in manufacturing. If drawings aren't coming back as often, drawings aren't getting rejected as often, things like that. And if you can get buy-in from, someone directly above you to kind of enforce these things, then, it starts making more sense throughout the whole process for everyone. That, kind of touching on Scott's comment there of not being able to get anyone to commit. Like, you have to justify your standards. It can't just be, like Adam said, on a whim. There has to be reasons that we do it a certain way, reasons that, you're trying to implement these things.
I can speak from experience. The best way, Scott, to get standards and get vault is show ROI. Show the money that you're wasting right now on doing the way you're doing it compared to if you changed and you had standards and you had vault. ROI, money speaks to every business. If you can show that I can save you money and will be more profitable, they'll go out and spend the money. I had to do it many a times as an application engineer, as far as overseeing engineering. When I showed them that they were going to save money, they would write checks.
All of a sudden, it's interesting.
It is very interesting.
Yep. And when a mistake does happen, when something was shortcutted and you warned against it, find out what it cost the company in terms of manufacturing when there was an error. When they see how much money is being, thrown out the window, that's also an eye opener.
Mm-hmm. So Jesse's asking about, is there an example of clean and correct data?
You want to go first, Jason?
Yeah, I don't see it very often, but the one that comes to mind, the folder structures are right, the naming construction was correct. They maybe had a little more categories than I would have, but every category had a purpose, and it took the CAD admin making sure everyone's following the standards and making sure that things were getting released right. It's about knowing the products you make, and whether you organize it by product, by customer. Every business is different, but as you guys have heard me say before, it's like these models represent hundreds, if not thousands, of billable hours to make a master release drawing that represents an entire product that then gets sold. And that is the document of record. It's easy to think of them as files, but they're very expensive files, and they should be treated as such.
I think if I was to boil it down to one word, again, would be consistency. I mean, look, any company can have any different, nomenclature for the part numbering schemes. There could be multiple nomenclatures based on product lines. But the bottom line is when you start to talk about, clean data to me, as more of a data scientist, software engineer, is something that's consistent that I can logically build an algorithm by looking at. So for example, if you've got a part number that has the revision in the name, and then you got another part number that doesn't have the revision in the name, or you have a part number that's got a title also in the file name versus one that doesn't, and your data is just all over the place, to me, that's what would look like dirty data, right? Because there's no consistency. If we were to try to automate anything or to migrate anything, it would be very hard for somebody like myself to be able to look at these file names and interpret what those mean, you know, through programming. So as a human, we can typically look at some data and start to make assumptions about what this might mean or what it doesn't mean. But when you're talking about business systems, it's a whole different ballgame. And it's a lot harder to write algorithms that can interpret what that data means. So consistency is really the key, no matter what way you go. And then when you're talking about, you know, file structure, data structure, whether you base it off of projects, you know, that all really depends on you know, how that, you know, digital representation of your engineering process looks like, right? So you may sort things into projects, you may sort them into one company that I worked in, we built trains and we sorted everything by what we called item families, right? So there was basically just a 5-digit, you know, number that signified a certain drawing series, and then there was a, you know, generic sequence number that came after. But the key is that it was always the same. Every time I looked at a certain item family, I knew exactly what it was going to be. So consistency, I think, is the biggest key in having clean data.
Yeah, to kind of piggyback on that is I think of not needing tribal knowledge to get around things. So if, you know, ideally, as you know, your company grows, you get more engineers, you're going to hire more people to start working on these files. How much time to bring them up to speed are you going to need? If it's all organized and consistent, like Adam said, and it makes sense to navigate through, it'll take less time. But if you have to kind of explain to them, oh, you know, some folders are here because of this, but if it's before this year, they're in this folder, things like that, then it gets more complicated. That's kind of like dirty data. If you have a consistent system of your data, then it's easier, you know, you can show them the examples of this is how it works. These are the projects that you're that are created. This is how that structure is followed. So things like that I associate with clean data.
Jason, you want to go over what you have here? Why do you need
Yeah.
it? I mean, we've talked a lot about it.
Yeah, the big benefit of having a CAD admin really is, you know, you have that one person that you can go to if there's a question about the standard, about troubleshooting, you know, if something's not working, especially, you know, it's nice to have one person that's really intimate in terms of the workflows, the engineering change process, what to do, you know, if something gets stuck or someone's on vacation, how can they help move the life cycles or the change order along. And so it's really having an expert involved to really kind of help make sure that that everyone's doing what they're supposed to, and really having the CAD admin be responsible to hold everyone else to make sure, you know, they're following the numbering, you know, numbering and naming, you know, being consistent is critical. And having the forethought to try to set things up ahead of time to anticipate growth. You know, it's very time consuming to go back and try to fix file names or to restructure a vault. You know, you can do it, but we typically find that it's a lot of work. And if you can avoid it by just spending a little bit of time in the beginning or as you grow, making sure everyone's being consistent, you know, if you consistent wrong data, that's far easier to clean than something that requires you know, a human to really have to make a bunch of decisions for every single file. That's very time consuming.
So we have a question. Best practices for years long previous. Dirty data vault buildup. Stop and clean, or clean as you come back across needed files.
Question.
Depends how aggressive you want to be.
It depends on that, and also what's your staffing like, you know. I mean, because I've seen companies hire extra people on specifically to do data cleaning or cleaning up models while, you know, other CAD designers are working on production. Or I've seen it the other way around where, you know, if you're designing on a file that hasn't been touched in years, does it make sense to modify this right now or clean it right now, or wait till it comes back out for revision? Which is typically, if you don't have the manpower to have people there to clean, then I would say you probably want to do it where you clean as the files come back across and they're needed. Yep, exactly. During the ECO process is a really good time to do that.
Well, then it also comes to, are you planning to do something else with Vault? Are you going to attach it to your ERP or to a PLM? And then that really becomes, we need to clean the data before we do that.
Yeah.
And then you have to set a project to clean it.
The urgency on it at that point escalates.
Because if you don't and you link the systems, when you want to clean it later, it'll be even harder because now you're renaming in Vault, you're renaming in PLM or ERP. It's assuming you have the rights to rename and that there isn't an ECO or some sort of other change associated with the item. Like, it could be as simple as changing one thing on Vault, or, waiting and doing it later once all the systems are connected, and you could be changing 4 things just to change one file name.
Trash going in, trash coming out.
Yeah, there's no way around it. It's
Goes back to ROI. Because at the end of the day, it's all about money. That file is worth a lot of money and the engineer's time, and then it goes down to manufacturing. And I don't think, I was told years ago that engineering doesn't get the respect it needs. It's always the accounting department or sales and marketing. But in actuality, if you look at where our company's money is made from, it's made from the engineering department. And I think they should put more money into the engineering department, because if you have crap data coming out of engineering, you're losing money.
Yeah, one of the biggest places we see that is around the libraries and the purchase parts, because those files affect so many assemblies. And so cleaning up that data and getting that set up right early on, makes it easier to fix the assemblies later as you come across them, because you could just reference the correct or updated purchase parts. So you can kind of take a phased approach depending on what needs to be cleaned, but in the end, it really just comes down to how clean do you need it, and what kind of time frame do you want.
I like Jesse's comment. Engineering is the Rodney Dangerfield of the organization. Gets no respect. 100% correct.
Yeah, I could tell you stories about having to stand up in executive meetings and say, hey, what about engineering? What about IT? Because it was all about sales.
It was.
If you don't do your engineering right, what are you going to sell?
That's right. If anybody want a chart that I built that shows engineering and everything it affects, I'd be willing to send it to them. I don't have any other questions that have come in.
Yeah, luckily we've been getting questions to spark off the conversations here. So
yes, it's been really good.
Yeah, I don't see any on. I don't see any questions on YouTube either. So I think.
Yeah, a couple more minutes here. See if anybody has.
Yeah, I think one just popped in.
Mm-hmm.
I see 2 people requesting that chart. I'll make sure I get it to you guys. I'll make sure that chart gets sent out to you guys.
Yeah, it's good to have the conversation like this and think about it, because it's very easy to kind of, get stuck in the day-to-day work, but it's easy to forget how important a CAD admin is to the integrity of the business, to the data, because if no one takes ownership of Vault, then, everyone will just do it what they feel like.
Get the Wild West.
I got Scott asking if we're able to help look at their file structure and data structure. And yeah, we can get your information, set up some time. We can do that. That is possible. Everybody wants the chart. I had to use it to show executives years ago, you know, because I got in a meeting and they're always talking about something else. And I said, well, really, if you think about it, engineering is the centerpiece of this wheel, and showing how everything touches, everything is controlled by engineering. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like Jared put in a question here. Where's the best place to start when cleaning up your purchased and library parts? You know, descriptions, file names, etc.
It's hard, especially if you've already started. The trick is really just deciding where, you know, how many purchase parts you have. You know, do you make a custom content center database and move that files into Vault? Do you clean up the stuff that's already in there because everyone just places from the library in Vault? The biggest thing before you start making changes is might as well just take a step back and really think about, you know, file naming, metadata, because it's like, if people can't, if engineers can't easily search and find what they want, whether it's in the right subfolder or the right metadata, they're just going to either model it or go find it somewhere else. And so I think that's the first thing to look at is
how accessible is it?
Yeah, exactly. Because if you can't find it, they're not going to place it in the assembly.
Or that specific one, like
yeah,
and they're just going to remake it. Or
yeah, the worst thing you could have is, you know, 8 separate files that are all, you know, a 1/4 inch bolt, because that's where cleaning up assembly starts to get very tedious.
Which might help with what is it, duplicate parts, or
yeah, the duplicate
geometry
search to kind of find that kind of thing.
Yeah, so you can kind of, it'll spit out excuse me, a report of all the files inside your Vault. You know, you tell it where to look, but it'll give you a report of all the files that have the same geometry inside of Vault, even if they're named differently. And if you start with where your purchase parts are stored, you know, you might find your 7 or 8 1/4 inch bolts, like Jason was saying. But yeah, accessibility, and then seeing if somebody has already started making duplicate library parts in there, even though they're under different names.
And the dangerous part is, you know, when you get purchase parts in the actual assembly folder and not in a library, is, you know, that starts to create all kinds of headache in terms of, you know, because they're not controlled as well as they could be if they were in a library. It starts affecting the bill of material and the quantities, especially, you know, if half the assembly is referencing one part and the other half the assembly is referencing another, makes things more complicated for purchasing. And that's interesting with being consistent and consistent data, especially once Vault's connected to ERP, you know, having that consistency so that you can actually get, you know, an accurate BOM from the beginning and make, you know, purchasing jobs easier and quoting easier because you actually have, you know, the correct data.
Did you see the chat come in about Scott's multiple CAD and inventor data and multiple server locations? Yeah, first of all, first thing is everything should be on one server in one location. That, I think that'll stop throwing the fits that you're having. But yeah, your best bet would be to get all that stuff into Vault, especially if you're using Inventor.
And just obviously we don't know exactly what your situation is, but I've seen it where we have maybe different business units within a corporation. So let's say we're designing train cars in this engineering department, but there's a whole nother central maintenance that builds the assembly lines around those cars, and obviously they have a separate Vault. If it's a situation like that, then we do also have processes we can show you that allow you to work with components across Vault. But if you're talking about having products in the same product line or product itself that are on multiple Vault servers, then that's—
This is just, I think, just on servers.
Shared folders.
This is shared folders. which makes, yeah,
Dangerous game.
Yep. And
Yeah,
we do
'cause-
have, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, because like Adam was saying, even if it's multiple divisions on different servers, once you get it in Vault, you can have Vault on servers closer to each location, still all connected, and that way you could still share that data with everyone.
or you put it in the cloud,
It's also true.
and then you just have one central location, which we do for customers.
So we have
It
a
sounds like a
question
great
on YouTube.
opportunity.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jason. So we have a question on YouTube. Ben wanted to know whether we have some sort of a job description or list of responsibilities that we could pass out, like on a sheet for what a CAD administrator's role would be. I don't know if we have that. We'd probably make something. When you pass out the your chart, maybe we can pass that along as well.
Okay, I think we can work on that. We can get together and write a brief job description of what they would do and attach that with a chart and get it out to everybody.
We'll just act like we're hiring a CAD administrator.
Yeah, I do really appreciate everybody's input today. It's been great for this discussion. And Jason and I felt that this was a topic that needed to be discussed, you know, because our last KVA that we did was around the cost of your files, you know, and this I think leads right into that was, you know, now you need the CAD admin to help you be successful. I think, you know, we'll continue this line of KVAs in Vault going forward, the progression. You know, I don't know what our next one will be yet, but it will be around, you know, diving more into the basics of Vault and how to use it and stuff like that.
Yeah, because we find too often, you know, who's ever has been in the engineering department the longest gets, you know, auto assigned the CAD admin. And, you know, it should be something that's well documented, and upper management should really understand the roles and responsibilities they're asking someone to do. It's not just making a few changes to Vault. There's a lot more that goes into maintaining the data and the standards.
Ironically, it should be standardized who is in charge of the standards
Exactly.
at the company.
Jesse writes winner by default.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A lot of the times, yeah. Congratulations, you won.
Didn't
Didn't even know you were playing.
know you raised your hand.
Exactly.
Oh, if we don't have any other questions, I want to thank everybody for coming today. We really appreciate this.
Yeah.
And
Shameless
we-
plug here before we jump off. We have the webinar next Wednesday. For those of you that may be on Vault Basic or Vault Workgroup or even Vault Pro, since Vault Workgroup is being discontinued by Autodesk, we're providing some training on the features that you get with Vault Professional. So if you guys haven't signed up for that, then
Yeah,
see you next week.
yeah, we'll all be on next Thursday for that class, or Wednesday. Sorry.
Wednesday, yeah.
Yeah, next Wednesday. It's a 4-hour class on Vault Professional.
We got one more question that came in. Where's the best place to get information about Vault? We can send out that information as well, but there's online courses for, you know, Autodesk University that's out there that can teach you a lot of that. There's Autodesk University's on CAD administration. There's really good help file for the Vault product line, actually, that will step you through how to use every feature in Vault. So we can include some links when we send out the rest of the information on whatever information you need regarding Vault or CAD administration, I guess. I'm assuming that's what you're referring to. Stevens.
Yeah, and we can, and if you need help, we do this every day. You can reach out and we can help you. Everybody, have a great rest of your day and a good weekend.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.